Okay, good afternoon. 4:06 p.m. post-market, May 24th, 2021. What do we get? Dow higher by 0.5%. S&P 1% higher. Nasdaq outperforms 1.4% higher. I mean, pretty much whatever I said earlier today, it was just a continuation. We had oil putting on almost 4%, and we'll get to why that is the case and just how ridiculous the whole situation is with crude oil, what they find to prop it up. Matter of fact, let's get to that now. I mean, just quickly, gold slightly higher, silver put on about 1%, and cryptos, which we will talk about a little more later, also putting on very nice gains towards the end of the day. Bitcoin just around 40,000 last time I checked, just a little bit below. Okay, so let's get to crude oil. The news was that oil prices up sharply as U.S. official raises doubt that Iran will comply with the nuclear commitments. So, just last Wednesday, the story was Israel and Hamas. Now, of course, we have some sort of ceasefire going on there, and so they find something else. And what even is this? I mean, did anybody ever think that Iran was going to actually comply with these nuclear commitments? I certainly didn't. I knew that they would use this kind of stuff as a mechanism to prop up crude oil. They will do whatever it takes to prop up crude oil, hence why I buy the dips on crude oil in this environment. So I don't even know what skeptical comments, and this was by Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I don't know who this guy is, but I have zero respect for him. I don't even need to see this article to have any that's really all there is to say. But to put on a 4% gain on oil, I mean, check out the petrodollar. Check out what happened with Kissinger in the 70s, the whole deal that was done there. I mean, the Middle East and the U.S. worked together to prop up the price of crude oil. See, even though the U.S. isn't even part of OPEC, they're actually the biggest component of propping up the price of crude oil. We give them military, which they use to sometimes even strike themselves. Wink, wink. And they allow us to price oil in dollars. A whole scheme that we don't need to go into right now, but understand the kind of connection that exists between the Middle East and the U.S. It's not, for us it's maybe hateful, but for the people in power in both of these respective countries, it is the most orgasmic relationship possible. They have shafted people so hard, keeping the price of crude oil artificially propped up for so long now that it's honestly unbelievable that people aren't catching on to just how important crude oil is to the military-industrial complex, to the stock market, and to pretty much every facet of what we're seeing today in terms of the stock market and otherwise, though. Energy-wise, we could look at, suppression of other energy technologies that aren't oil, that should be much bigger, but obviously patent-wise or even just straight-up concealing-wise. Take the example of Nikola Tesla, where they just went into his lab when he died and stole all of his information. Why can't we ever see that? Whatever. Okay, that's enough on crude oil. I wanted to get... I forgot to mention, dollar did finish the day lower. Below 90, like I said this morning, would be important. Stay below 90, we put on good gains. Okay. So I have two articles here on Bitcoin. So we have this Nouriel Roubini from Roubini Macro Associates says, Bitcoin isn't a currency or financial asset, but looks like a bubble. Roubini. And then here's Bitcoin isn't even a reliable hedge for risk-off events, let alone inflation shocks. It's actually highly pro-cyclical. In difficult times, crypto assets don't go up, they go down. Now, it's really not that hard to think about this for 1 second and realize that this is total bullshit, because when did Bitcoin even come out? Oh yeah, 2009. So it wasn't even around in the 2008 crash. I get the COVID crash, But let me explain why Bitcoin will be going up in the next crisis. It is because it is going to be an inflationary crisis, okay? It is going to be when the Federal Reserve gasses the Forex or whatever, the debt market, to such an extent that rates spike and cash flows out of the debt market, the treasury market, biggest market in the world with the Forex market, goes out of the stock market. And where does that go? Does it just float away into oblivion? No, it goes into assets. And why do people want to own cryptos? It's because the same way bonds are a hedge against negative events that affect the stock market, cryptos will serve as a hedge for the negative event that brings down the debt market, obviously priced in US dollars, and the US dollar is what's being inflated. And the same thing with the stock market, it's being inflated. Now, Bitcoin's being inflated, and honestly, I don't know if the stock market will necessarily crash to the extent it could even put on gains depending on how much inflation is created. But we have to understand that inflation is the name of the game for the Federal Reserve. This is how they gain power. They will not stop. They're not even close to stopping. And so Bitcoin and other cryptos will be these assets for the future that money goes into after the dollar in its current form takes the nosedive. Okay? And so we also have another article, says Ray Dalio, Bridgewater Associates. Dalio says, I have some Bitcoin at crypto conference. Personally, I'd rather have Bitcoin than a bond. Of course you'd rather have Bitcoin than a bond. I mean, we're running into fucking inflation up the wazoo. I mean, people are not ready for the amount of inflation. I mean, we're already seeing it. We've been seeing it for 10 years. Shrinkflation. They suppress all the inflation statistics. I mean, it's not that hard to, I don't know, go out to eat. I mean, we should be seeing deflation over time because we should become more efficient. I haven't seen any deflation, and I've seen inflation in my lifetime. So, I mean, a bond is dead in the water. I mean, that is just a screwed asset. I would rather own a stock than a bond. I think that's actually safer for the crisis because a bond will not save you from any inflation. A bond will just lose value with inflation because you're getting paid back in dollars. Meanwhile, a stock at least represents a share of a company, and so that share will increase as the amount of dollars is printed, theoretically. Now, of course, the real value of a stock in the stock market today is probably 70 to 80% lower. However, that's that. Okay. I did want to get to the chapter on cybernetics.